and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Carbon Jacked. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P, and we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
We're delighted to say that this series of Qtr Time podcasts is supported by Carbon Jacked, an environmental startup that helps you combat climate change.
They're an awesome company that provide monthly memberships which plant trees, support epic climate projects, and help you to reduce your carbon footprint.
Memberships start from just £2.50 per month, so you can help save the planet for less than a cup of coffee.
Signing up is super easy. Go to carbonjack.com and enter NetballPod for a huge 30% off. The link is in our show notes. Go check it out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Qtr Time podcast. This is episode 7. Huge weekend of netball this weekend with 10 games in the Vitality Netball Superleague round 7 and 8 and the ANZ Premiership kicking off in New Zealand as well. We're getting into the netball overload time of year and I'm loving it, to be honest. Before we get into today's episode, we just wanted to give a quick mention to say thank you so much to everyone who's tuned into our episode with Qtr Time so far. We've received so much awesome feedback on that one and it was a really great conversation. If you haven't caught up already, make sure you take a listen when you can. So Lucy G, what's coming up on today's show?
Okay, so first up today, we're going to whip through our usual 3-word summaries of all the Super League matches before moving on to our game and player of the round. Then, in honour of the opening weekend of the ANZ Premiership, we'll be taking a closer look at those matches with none other than the voice of New Zealand netball. It's the incredible Jenny Woods. Absolutely love her. We first analyse the games from round 1 before moving on to a discussion about the wider New Zealand netball landscape and how this feeds into the development of the Superfans.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so on to our summaries. Take it away, Luce.
So first up, we had Stars versus Rhinos, with Rhinos taking the win 53-49, and I've gone for lacking in consistency. This was a pretty cracking game, to be fair, but neither side were able to maintain consistency throughout each quarter. There were some pretty big goal differences for 3 out of the 4 quarters. Quarter 2, Rhinos won by 7. Quarter 3, Stars won by 7. And then quarter 4, Rhinos won by 6. It was such a flip-flop affair. Stars really benefited from having Izzy Eaton back in the squad after being out for round 6.
Next up on to Wasps versus Dragons, which was 60 to Wasps 37 Dragons. And I said, Rachel 250 done. This was a well-needed win for Wasps and their second win of the season. Rachel Dunn celebrated her 250th match in the VNSL in this game. What an incredible achievement. There just weren't enough opportunities for Dragons, sadly, who had 15 unforced errors to Wasps 7. And the attacking line couldn't stand up to the pressure from Ella Powell-Davis and Josie Huckle.
Yeah, Ella Powell-Davis is on a mad one this season.
Love her.
It. First game on Saturday was Pulse versus Storm. Oh, this was a corker. Pulse took the win 56-50. And I've gone for penalties. Both teams had more penalties than goals in this game. There was 67 for Pulse and 60 for Storm. And it was certainly a hotly contested game with a lot of body on body, and more on that coming up later. For Pulse, this is a really important win, and it was great to see their attack line playing so fluidly.
Next, we had interesting game between Mavericks and Sirens, 48 to Mavericks, 45 to Sirens. And thank you to Maddie Allen, who wrote in for this one and said, last minute scramble.
Nice.
Mavericks got away with this one, and it looked like a really close one from the quarter scores. Maddie said that Gia and Taylor carried the Sirens midcourt, and Sirens managed to close the gap in the final quarter, which is something we have noticed before about Mavericks' game this season, that last quarter dip. Great to hear that Brittany Clark came on for an injured Ina Marie Venter, and she shot 13 from 13 at 100% and was the only shooter from both teams without a miss.
Nice, what a queen. Following this was Thunder versus Rhinos, Battle of the Roses, and it was 69-45 in favour of Thunder. I've gone for fatigue takes over. This was sadly a bit of a blowout game, which I was really disappointed about. I was hoping for a really strong battle. Rhinos were very clearly exhausted from their win against Stars just 24 hours before. I think Brie Grierson in particular just like knackered, and the whole attacking end was just a bit of a disaster without Dixon. So let's hope it's not too long before she's back in the squad.
Great numbers at this one though. Looked like a really good vibe.
Oh mate, the arena looked insane. Hats off to Thunder. Incredible scenes.
Next up on to Sunday, we had Storm versus Mavericks.
Mate.
It was 55 to Storm, 53 to Mavericks. Big thank you to Laura on Twitter who sent in a 3-word summary for this one. She said, contact or contest? Oh my days. What a game this must have been after such a tough game against Pulse the day before, which they narrowly lost. This was a huge win for Storm. And they've just demonstrated they are really the ones to watch this season. Mavericks were missing Ina Marie Venter for this game, which is a massive out for them. And Storm really took advantage. They had incredible defensive pressure from Kawanga in particular, and they ground out the win. So shaking things up. I love it.
Oh, mate, incredible. Following this was Bath 59 to Dragons 43. And I've said, keep pushing on. It sounds like this was a pretty good contest until that third quarter mark, as there were only 7 goals in it at halftime. By the end of the third quarter, though, Bath had more than doubled their lead. I think more often than not this season, Dragons have kind of dropped off in the second half. So Danny will need to take a look at why that is if they want to secure, more than just the one win this season and really challenge those top teams.
Yeah. Next up, we had Lightning versus Wasps, another corker of a game. And it was 57 to Lightning, 53 to Wasps. And I said, goal defense supremacy. Yeah. This was a corker, definitely worth a watch if you missed it live. Overall, I was so impressed with the work of both goal defences. Ella Bowen replaced Fran Williams and did an incredible job, earning herself her first player of the match. And on the other side, Rachel Fee, wow, she had a stonker and she really kept Wasps in this game. It was edgy in that final quarter, but Lightning did so well to get the win against a very spirited and up and about Wasps team.
Yeah, for sure. First up on Monday, again, another cracking game, Bath versus Lightning, with Lightning taking the win at 53 to 44. And I've gone for fourth quarter annihilation. The scoreline in no way reflects the quality of this game. This was an absolute thriller, and it was so close all the way up until that last quarter when Bath just fell apart. I don't even know what happened. Bath were actually ahead at 3-quarter time, only by 1 goal, but they were ahead, exactly the same as they were in the Thunder game. But it was an 18-8 final quarter to Lightning that made the final scoreline more significant than the margin throughout the majority of the game.
Wow. And the final game this weekend was Pulse versus Sirens, with Pulse taking the win 48 to 38. And I said, low scoring affair. Sirens did manage to keep Pulse to their lowest score of the season. It's actually the only time they've scored below 50, but they just weren't able to put points on the board themselves and only scored 26 by 3-quarter time. The partnership between Keeble and Fedoju is unreal, and they picked up 6 rebounds, 14 deflections, and 12 turnovers between them. McCall, on the other hand, shot at just 60% in this game, and this loss will be a real stinger for Sirens, who've only won 2 from 8 so far this season. I feel really bad because I tipped them at the beginning. I knew this would happen.
You're the curse.
I'm never going to say anything again. Sorry, Sirens, if it's me.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a disappointing start to the season from them. I'm sure they feel it as well, but yeah, I mean, how awesome was it to have so many games this weekend streamed? 5. It's absolutely in my element. If you guys are attending any of the games in person, which we hope you are, we'd love to see the fans pack out the arenas. We would really love to hear about it and what you thought of the games, and send us in your 3-word summaries, particularly for the games that aren't streamed. Do get in touch on social media or email us, or, carrier pigeons, whatever you want.
Moving on to our game of the round, Lucy G, which one have you gone for this week?
I tell you what, it was actually really hard to pick. We've had some corking games this round, but I have gone for Lightning versus Bath. Honourable mention to Wasp versus Lightning, which was a very close second for me. But yeah, this one has just pipped it. Stats-wise, both teams were fairly even in most areas, with the main outliers being penalties. There was 59 to Lightning and just 34 to Bath. Lightning actually dominated on turnovers as well. They had 12 to Bath 7, but interestingly also had 3 more unforced errors. The big thing for me in this game, there were some questionable changes for Bath, particularly Kim Borger and Kirsty Harris, who was subbed during the game. Harris, I thought, was putting out such a strong performance. I was actually baffled when she came off. And I just think you've got to give that Borger-SDL combo more time to work. Borger was benched in the second quarter, brought back on in the third. Her combination with SDL is so special, and I really think that Bath actually need them on court. I don't know why she keeps being brought off so early.
Yeah, agree.
Fran Williams played an absolute blinder in this game. She had 3 defensive rebounds, 4 intercepts, 1 deflection, 6 turnovers. She was just racking up stats for fun. And she was up against, a formidable SDL, which is no mean feat in itself. I'm really loving this Fran Williams, Alice Harvey combination. It's definitely starting to produce the goods. And I think Fran would actually probably be really happy with her performance in this game after she had a not so strong game against Wasps. It wasn't a bad game, but it wasn't her strongest.
Yeah, it's definitely been a good move for her to go to Lightning. And I mean, Lightning just looks so dangerous. I think it was Tracy Neville said in commentary in the Wasps game that before this round, we hadn't actually seen that much of Lightning so far this season. And now we have. And I mean, it's just really scary what they can produce. And they've sort of gone under the radar. But I mean, Panagari in particular for me is just so dominant and unstoppable really on that feed into Cholok.
I tell you what, Nat Panagari has got to be one of the most underrated players in our league. She's like the little engine that could. She's in constant perpetual motion, absolutely non-stop, always working, always grafting. And I'm really in love with what she's doing this season. I'm a big fan.
Me too. I wonder if she'll put her hand up, for selection now that we've got no Guthrie.
That's a good point. I mean, I'd be surprised if she did make it, but she's certainly given people a run for her money.
Because she's actually so good on the feed as well. She's a centre wing defence that plays like a centre wing attack. So she's that true centre, I think, from me.
Yeah, love her. What game have you gone for, Luce?
So I've gone for the Pulse versus Storm game. I thought this was a really interesting and exciting game. Might be a bit biased because I did attend in person. It was a bit of a sloppy start from Pulse. 2 balls pretty much directly into Storm's hands in the opening quarter. And it took them a little while to get that attacking rhythm. Some of the feeds early on were just lacking that little bit of finesse. But once they were able to work Sasha into the game, it was pretty smooth sailing. The spice rating on this game was off the charts, absolutely extra hot, particularly Ratu and Austin. There was a lot of pushing and shoving, a lot of appealing and wanting looks towards the umpires. But what I really like about Ellie Ratu is that she just takes it all in her stride and gets on with it. We did see Emma McGee cop an elbow to the head in this game. But when you look back, it's actually from her own teammate. It was just a bit of one of those accidental collision type things. Really hope that she is okay. She went off in a stretcher, which, I mean, that wasn't on my VNSL bingo card, but it just highlights this game was really tightly contested. It was very physical. There was no room to breathe in either circle. And actually, talking of penalties, there was a lot of whistle. So it was physical, but it was being pulled up by the umpires as well. 67 to Pulse, 60 to Storm. Wow. Keeble was the most highly penalised on court with almost a third of Pulse's penalties to her name, 21 she had. Cooper and Middleton from Storm were the next joint highest with 14. I did think that the amount of whistle was quite jarring at times, and the game kind of lacked a bit of flow from that perspective, but there was so much skill and flair on display. You really couldn't call who was going to come away with it until right at the end, which was super exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I really loved this game, and I actually thought that Mickey gave a very interesting post-match interview where she said, no, Emma McGee is not okay. We've got one player in a hospital bed at the moment, and that was bound to come from the amount of contest or contact that our shooters had to bear with the whole way through the game. And it kind of reminded me of some of the interviews that Melissa Bessel has done, particularly one she did the other day, where she was inferring that the umpiring was inconsistent. Mickey said that her players were looking at what was allowed by defenders against her shooters, but are getting pulled up when they do the same. But all due respect to Mickey, they're not doing the same. Fumi in particular has an incredible ability to challenge very cleanly from behind. It's almost like Shamira Sterling like. And I would argue that the Storm defenders aren't as strong as this, particularly Leah Middleton. And I think Keeble is a prime example of the defenders not getting away with it, with the amount of contacts that she has. She was the most penalised on court, and she even got herself a warning. So I just think that emotions were running high for Storm by the end of that game. And I don't know, maybe Mickey could have done with reviewing or rewatching that game before that interview. But, you know, it all adds character and conversation to the game, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a really interesting one. And I think, you know, the umpires need to control the game, which I think they did. But then I think it's up to the players to adjust a little bit if they are getting pulled up. And yeah, I think really what this was about was the fact that it was a very important game in the context of the league, and Storm didn't win, but then they turn around the next day and beat Mavericks. So, you know, all good.
Yeah. All swings and roundabouts. So moving on to our player of the round, Luce, take it away.
So I have gone for Sasha McDonald this week. Ooh. And I think, you know we've already talked about the Pulse game, but I just thought she showed so much control in this Storm game. I love the way that she moves around the court. She knew exactly when it was time to put in a beautiful feed over to Cheen under the post and when it was time to put the shot up. She shot 20 from 22 at 91% in the Storm game, which is a very good day at the office for a goal attack. And on top of that, she had 18 feeds, which was the second most highest on court. She just gets herself in a great position, combines so beautifully with whichever mid-quarter she has out in front of her. There is the occasional tendency to pass out instead of going for the shot, but I think with more experience, she could become even more dominant. We couldn't watch the Sirens game on TV, but it looked like another solid outing with 9 from 11 and 82% and 9 feeds, which was the equal highest for Pulse. She also nabbed 2 deflections in that game. And you know how much we love a defensive attacking player. Overall, I just think she's been the missing link for the Pulse team. And watching her in person, you really can see how almost silky smooth she is moving around court. And her court craft is so good. She gives the defenders a really hard time.
Yeah, I'm really starting to enjoy what she's bringing to the game now. And I think she had a bit of a slow start to the season. I definitely wasn't convinced in the first sort of couple of games, but the more time that she's had over here, the more court time she's had, she's really starting to grow into her own, which is great to see.
Yeah, defo. Who have you gone for, Luce?
Oh, mate, I tell you what, I struggled so much to just pick one person this week. Honourable mention to Nat Panagari, who I was waxing lyrical about earlier, but also Shadeen van der Merwe had a blinder, Pumza Mawani. But I have gone for Rebecca Airy this week.
Nice.
I think given that she had a double header and one of those was against Thunder, I really think that she deserves this coveted award. I think the move to Rhinos is working really well for her. She's getting the court time and she's really relishing it. The first game of the weekend in particular was absolutely incredible from Airy. She had 6 intercepts, 8 turnovers and 2 defensive rebounds.
Wow.
She actually had the second highest number of intercepts from the whole doubleheader weekend, narrowly behind Pumza, who got 8 against Dragons. And she's a really clean defender as well. She only had 6 penalties in total for each game over the weekend. I think her job was made significantly harder by dare I say, an imploding attacking end for Rhinos against Thunder. There were just so many turnovers for Thunder and the ball was just screaming down court that it made it really difficult for her to tackle. So I don't think she was necessarily as strong in that game. But overall, I think she did really, really well and is a fantastic addition for Rhinos.
Yep. Love her. Utility defender. We love to see it. Really strong. And I think that something that she does so well, like you said there, is the cleanliness of it. You know, she is getting hand to ball, but she's doing it and keeping in play as well.
Yeah, love it. Coming up next, we take a deep dive into the ANZ Premiership Round 1 with Jenny Woods. If you haven't watched the ANZ, trust me, it is totally worth getting into. I would even argue it's almost my favourite competition. There are 3 games per week. All of the games are available to watch for viewers outside of New Zealand via the ANZ website. Take note, SSN VNSL. And in our chat with Jenny, we cover everything from the league structure, how it serves the Silver Ferns, as well as standout players and which team she's tipping to win this year. All coming up just after the break.
Do you want to help combat climate change? Well, you can by joining Carbon Jacked. We're both members and we love it.
Memberships start from £2.50 and your money goes towards amazing projects, from planting trees in the Peak District to providing refugees with sustainable solar cookers. You can get a huge 30% off by entering Netball Pod when you sign up at carbonjack.com.
Carbon Jacked also do loads of great work with businesses, so get in touch if your company wants to become more sustainable. All the info you need is in the show notes, so make sure you take a look. It is such a huge honour to welcome Jenny Woods onto the pod. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you, Lucy. And Lucy.
How are things for you guys over there?
Oh, well, not too bad at the moment. I mean, the weather's still glorious. It's beautiful sunny days. But we are a little bit in the clutches of COVID, which I'm sure you know all about. So we've just had the start to the ANZ Premiership, and well, fingers crossed for how it plays out, really.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll get onto that shortly. It was a really exciting opening weekend, and it's so great to have you on the show. So we'd love to chat to you firstly about that opening round of the ANZ, and then we'll take a bit more of a wider look at the landscape of netball in New Zealand as a whole, all things about the Silver Ferns and how they're tracking and things like that.
Sounds fantastic.
Let's dive straight in. So that opening game of the season, which was Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic defeating the reigning champions in Northern Mystics 46-43. Where do you think it went wrong for the Mystics in this game?
Well, it's a fascinating start to the season because I think there's a lot of backstory to this. So this was round 1. We've got all sorts of COVID protocols in place because I don't think there's a team at the moment in New Zealand that hasn't had some contact with the virus. And if you have at least 4 players affected by COVID, so they don't have to be infected, but if they're a close contact or for some reason can't play, that's when you can apply for a postponement. So in that first round, the Pulse were meant to play the Stars. That was postponed. And the Mystics, I think you could argue, could have had good grounds to ask for a postponement. They were without Grace Nweki, no Phoenix Karaka, no Fa'amu Ioane. They were all, starting 7 players. But I like the fact that they went ahead because I think what's going to happen for this New Zealand season is it's 13 rounds. At the moment, the final is due to be played mid-June. So it's a pretty tight schedule, and I think any game that's postponed will have to be squeezed in somewhere before the end. So I think everyone's very aware that if they can get the game away, they want to get the game away. So I think going back to the question, I think in a way, I thought that result was a perfect result because 46-43, the Magic get a win. I mean, they haven't won, I think, for 14 games. In fact, funny enough, their first game last year, their only win last year, was against the Mystics in the opening round. And the score, I think, was pretty similar. So, that was great to give them some confidence. And I think the Mystics, knowing that they had however many players out, still managed just to lose by 3 and get a bonus point. I don't think they'll be too upset by that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought it was a really interesting game. And I think the Magic actually almost I think they let it slip from their grasp a little bit because they were out to 11 by one point, but then only won by 3. And I think when you consider Mystics were missing, the absolute powerhouse of Nweke in the back, that's actually a pretty good result.
Yeah. Oh, and I thought it was fascinating. The player who just about did all the damage for the Magic was none other than Bailey Mears, who only played 15 minutes. But she's gone to the Magic, and there's a few of them actually who all Silver Fern buddies. Bailey Mears went for the Mystics, Claire Kirsten and Katrina Rore and Amelia Ann Ignacio all went up from the Pulse. And of course, we've now had the news that Katrina Rore is having another baby, so that didn't quite work out. Ignacio is coming back from having a baby. So Mary Jane Araroa, who's the new coach of the Magic, she was asked at the beginning of the game the other day, how's your preparation been? And she just said a shambles, which it would have been because she's had COVID cases, she's had this, she's had that. So I think, and then I'm in the shooting circle at one stage because Bailey Mess is on restricted time, but in comes none other than Lever, who used to be a regular in the ANZ Premiership, but hasn't played for a couple and shot the lights out. So I think it's going to be one of those seasons, where any team will be just delighted to be playing. And I remember watching your Super League perhaps last season and the season before, and that was the common theme, in any interview, players and coaches just said, we are so grateful to be, out here on court. And that was very much the theme from the weekend's interviews.
And luckily that second game, that wasn't affected at all really by COVID. It was a surprising game, I felt, with the Tactics losing to the Steel by 17 goals. Scoreline was 71-54. I mean, I was certainly not expecting that. I don't think anyone was. And I personally felt that Kate Burley was a standout in that game. And we know she was another transfer. She moved south to the Mystics after last season. And I was thinking it can't have been easy to leave a team, that's just won a championship. What did you make of her performance?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think she's a real star. What Kate has to try and do is put in 60 minutes. There was one part in that game where she sort of came from nowhere and leapt through the air and, tapped the ball out. But she then tends to go quiet for a little while. But I agree with you, Lucy. I'm a fan. And the problem for her at the Mystics was that there simply wasn't room for her because they had 2 defenders coming back, and of course that was Michaela Sokolic-Beetson, who was always going to come back in. She's a fabulous player. She's had these 2 Achilles injuries, one after the other. So she's been off the playing court really for almost 2 years. So she wants to get back into that Silver Fern dress. And of course, Phoenix Karaka, who you're not going to leave out either. So it wasn't so much they didn't want her, they just couldn't fit her in. And I think it's smart to move south. That move south's done well for a number of players.
And another person we saw back was also Georgia Heffernan, back from her ACL, and she was fantastic. I actually think that both Heffernan sisters are incredible. I don't know what's going on in that gene pool, but it's amazing.
Well, you speak of their gene pool. I mean, it is the genes, honestly. Their mother, you wouldn't be old enough to remember, but their mother, Annette Heffernan, was a Silver Fern, and as was their aunt. It's in their blood, all right. And I, like you, I was really pleased to see her get some decent court time too, because she was a part of that horror season, and the Steel just had shooter after shooter go down with serious injuries. And so, wonderful to see these players back.
And obviously our own George Fisher was on fire in this game. And I mean, I'm really interested in the partnership between Savia Tui and her and how that progresses. I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah, that's really, she's a delight. I mean, she's come down here and everyone has just taken to her immediately. But no, she's charming. And as you say, that combination, she had it last year with Tiana Maturo, who now has gone back to the Pulse. And, that was kind of cool, that little combo, because they worked out that they were born in the same part of England when Waitomonu was over working for England Netball. And so I think they used to call each other sisters, which was quite a hoot because, of course, you can't get more different looking people. So she's gone back, and then in comes Saviour Tui, who on first look looks a similar kind of player. And I think, that was certainly a very positive outing for them. And the Steel were lucky, I think, as you said, they had no COVID. They weren't affected by COVID at all in that game. The tactics were, they had Vika Colotto, the interesting young shooter who's come down from Auckland. She wasn't available. And Kate Lloyd, who is a defender, wasn't available. So not two of their biggest names, but certainly I think that would have affected perhaps how Marianne Delaney-Hoshek might have run her team.
And also a big out in Jane Watson as well for the tactics.
Oh, these babies. I mean, jeepers, they just, no, it's wonderful, isn't it? I mean, you can't get angry over a baby. And I think there was a lot of delight when she announced that I think they were having a baby due in the end of May. So that will be the challenge for the tactics to keep that defensive end up. They've brought in Kalera Ngāwai-Thauthau, who was with the Pulse last season. And she's actually, it's almost like a coming home for her in a way because, yes, she's from Fiji, but she played a lot of her young netball in Christchurch when she was on a scholarship to a local school down there. So very much at home.
Yeah, I thought she was outstanding as well. Particularly, I think in that first half, she was having a bit of an impact and then she faded. And the final game of the weekend between the Central Pulse and the Robin Hood Stars, as we mentioned, that was postponed due to the ongoing pandemic. So we haven't seen these two teams take the court yet. What are you expecting from them both in round 2?
Well, it's a big ask, particularly for the Pulse, because they come off having not played and they go straight into a doubleheader. They've got Mystics on Saturday, and then they play the very next day, they play the Magic. So that's a big ask. And I saw a little bit of Yvette McCall's and jury tonight just saying that they should be good to go. They're itching to play. And I think that they are a team that may just surprise. I mean, they had a horror year last year, the Pulse. McCall's and jury was gone. Gail Parata came in, who didn't quite, I'm certainly not going to blame her for all the problems. There were a lot of issues. Suddenly she didn't have Ignacio. That she had bargained on. There was, team changes. But I think they'll be looking a lot stronger. They brought in Christy Manua from Australia, who had, what did she have, 5 years with the Giants over in Australia, followed Julie Fitzgerald when she had been at the Magic, went with Fitzgerald and now is coming back. She's an interesting player, actually, because she's eligible for, Superfan selection. So there's a few people around, and also Binion Hunt has come from the Sunshine Coast Lightning. So, interesting. And I think Kelly Jury has really grown. I think she was one of and there weren't many Silver Ferns who could have been quite pleased with how they went in that quad series. But she's co-captain with Tiana Maturo. So, interesting times for the Pulse. And, of course, the Stars. I would think the Stars, jeepers, that year for them last year when they sailed through the early rounds of the competition and then it all just turned to custard. They will not want a repeat of that. And the person I am the most looking forward to seeing on the court is Kayla Johnson. So she was Kayla Cullen. I have to say, she was always one of my favourite players to watch. So let's see if she's still got the magic.
Interesting. So looking at the league a bit more widely, so the ANZ has the fewest teams out of all the 3 major netball competitions, obviously the VNSL with 11 and the SSN with 8. And after the Trans-Tasman League split in 2016, Australia added 3 new teams and New Zealand added just 1. I was looking into this and I found that the population of New Zealand is considerably smaller than the UK or Australia. It's actually a lot fewer than I thought it was. And it's actually just over half of the population of London, which is quite baffling to find out. And so with this in mind, and considering other factors like geography and quantity of top level coaches, do you think 6 is the right number of teams for the competition, or would you like to see more teams introduced to provide a greater variety of competition and more opportunities for up and coming players?
No, I wouldn't like to see more teams, because I think you've hit the nail on the head. We're a very rare species. There aren't that many of us, and we haven't got the player base. And funnily enough, I was listening to Norma Plummer the other day on the radio. She made the point that really per head of population and player numbers, we that far above our, whatever that saying is. I mean, we do very well. So, no, I don't think we want any more teams. What we have here is so you've got the ANZ Premiership, and beneath it we have the what used to be called the Becco League. It's now called the Synergy Hair League, which is the league that runs beneath it. And that has been a fantastic addition. That came in pretty much after the split, I think, in 2017. And that has provided the feeder role into that next step up. And it was interesting. I watched the Synergy game in Christchurch the other day, and there's no question there is it's a different level up to ANZ. But, particularly in these COVID times, it means, they train with all together. The coaches are all interwoven. Often the assistant coach of the ANZ Premiership team is the head coach of the team below. So I think it's worked very well, and I think it will be also invaluable this season when so many teams are going to need to call on extra players.
Yeah, 100%. And since the Trans-Tasman split, the ANZ and SSN, I think, have gone in quite notably different directions, particularly in relation to imports. So there's a lot of talk in the netball world that having so many imports in the SSN was actually harming the Diamonds, but then again, I think if you watch the quad series, you might disagree with that assessment. But there is an argument that having imports actually allows players to come up against those different styles of play regularly throughout the domestic competition, and actually gives them better preparation for major competitions like the upcoming Commonwealth Games. Where do you stand on the import rule in the ANZ?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and there's no doubt, jeepers, Australia are looking good, as are England, I might add, but we'll come to that later. I think I like the fact that, we've only got 2 imports this year. George Fisher is one, and I think Kalera Ngāi is another. So a team can only have 1 import. It's interesting to me that 4 other teams have chosen not to have them. And, that Aussie league is really interesting. I think for a while there, every second shooter for a while was an import. And I do think that did damage Australia. But I think the things that's perhaps the biggest challenge for them is, the 3-point shot, and even more importantly, the ability to have timeouts during a quarter. So I like the fact that New Zealand has made a conscious decision to play international rules in the ANZ Premiership, and I think that's the good thing. So I like the imports, but I think they need to be limited, because I love seeing the players come out of South Africa and Malawi and Trinidad and it's great opportunities for them, and I'd hate to see that stopped. And I also think too, Australia have done England a massive favour in operating a high-performance sport program for your players. And I think there's no question that England's rise is, I'm sure, on the back of those competitions.
Another rule that you have in New Zealand, which we don't have in the UK, is a system where I understand the players are ranked and you can only have a certain number of players in each tier within your squad. So firstly, please can you explain how this works in practice? And secondly, why you think Netball New Zealand have decided to do this, for any of our listeners who don't know?
Well, that's a very good question, actually, Lucy, and it is quite complicated. I think it is all about teams not being able to just load up, but it does make for some very complicated contract discussions towards the end of each season. And I know, the Pulse have wrestled with that one. I think that was perhaps one of the reasons Amelia Anacinacio moved out, because they were not offering her that top tier level. And I think all sorts of reasons for that. So it's very complicated. I think what it's all about, I think, is to make a more even competition, because there was, when the ANZ started, there was some very, very uneven teams. And I think basically probably last year, that we've had, there were a lot of close results. So I think they largely get there. I must admit, I am not across all the ins and outs, but it's all to do with pay grades, and if you're superfan, if you're not, where do they think you're going? And it's a bit of a game of chess.
I mean, imagine it must be hard enough to be a coach and then to have all of these extra things to think about. It must be really puzzling. And when we spoke to Pamela Cookie a few weeks ago, she said that the Super League had actually tried this a few years ago, splitting up all the England players more evenly across the competition. But due to the semi-professional nature of the league, it didn't quite work out, because people weren't able to uproot their lives to play netball if they weren't be able to play with a local club. So how does this translate in New Zealand, given that the game, as it is over here, is still semi-professional there as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, and that's, Pamela would know all about that. I mean, she had a season or two down here back in the day. And the same thing applies. I mean, it's not like men's sport, who generally a family goes where the bloke goes to play, whereas it doesn't usually work for the women. But what you have got, and I think of two examples this time. So you have Phoenix Karaka, whose partner is a rugby player. He's up playing in Japan. So they've just made the arrangement. I'm going to stay in Auckland and play my netball. You go up to Japan, do your thing. Kayla Johnson and her husband Sean, he's a league player. He's playing in Australia, and she's here. So I think it's done with an awful lot of support from families and teams, and you get the impression from talking to people around it. We've got a very strong players association here, which is, they do amazing things. They, I think, make sure that around any new player that's moving or leaving, or that they are surrounded with, as I say, plenty of support, particularly as there are growing numbers of players with babies, with children. And that's another complication. I mean, women's sport is so complicated because it's not fully professional. So a lot of these people have jobs, and Shannon Saunders is a pharmacist, and we've got a couple of doctors, and you're Dr. Guskoff, and so it requires an awful lot of planning and thought.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting there, and I think it is around that support level that they're getting from the clubs, and it's really interesting to hear about the Players Association, because that's something that they're making really good strides here. And we had an interesting conversation a few weeks ago with the Players Association, but there's a lot to do and a lot of issues to tackle. So I suppose it might just take still a few more years till we get to the same level as some other sports.
Oh, I hope they do, because I think they're incredibly important. And I know the Players Association in Australia, which is now led by Catherine Harvey-Williams, funnily enough, who obviously was in New Zealand for a few years, and I had some very happy times commentating with Kath. But she's been back for a long time, so she's driving a lot of good things in Australian netball. Stephanie Bond has just come back from having a baby. So Adine Wilson has been in there working for the Players Association here. So they are, and I guess they're like the Players Union, but they do good work.
So discussing the Silver Ferns a bit more now, there was a recent interview with Deb Fuller, assistant coach for the Silver Ferns, where she said in relation to the gap between the ANZ Premiership and international level, there's definitely a gap, and I think there's a gap in our domestic competition if you compare our domestic competition with others. I wasn't quite sure whether I agreed with this assessment initially, but I guess if you look at the recent quad series where New Zealand were missing key players like Watson and Ekanasio, it was quite clear that the Silver Ferns are in danger of potentially over-relying on certain players. And I think you could even say that they've possibly done that previously with the likes of Langman and Folau. So what more do you think needs to be done within the ANZ competition to prepare the next layer of players for those big international performances?
I think the thing we were talking about it earlier, it's all about depth. And so when you're talking about player depth, you talk again about player numbers. And I think that's always going to be the challenge for New Zealand, because we are a small country. But I wonder, an example of perhaps the gap between the ANZ Premiership and up into international netball. I don't know. Well, I'm sure you would have watched every game, actually, of that quad series. But, Phil DeVuey was a player who had a great ANZ Premiership for the Mystics. She got a lot of court time because Bailey Mears had been off on the sideline. And she was a bolter for the Ferns, but she never took the court in the UK in that series at all. And from what I gather, she found that jump up just too hard. It's not to say she's never going to do it, but perhaps not quite ready yet. And we've seen other players like that. I mean, Peta Toiava comes to mind. Sensational for the Mystics and that what she does. She's had a couple of chances up in the Ferns, not quite there, just a little step off the pace. So I think, we just need to sort of keep at it, keep picking the right players. I mean, it sounds trite, doesn't it? But I think New Zealand is always going to be on the back foot if some of our key players aren't available. And so, as you've mentioned, we've no Jane Watson for these kind of games. Amelia Ekenasio is coming back from a baby, so I think her season, while yes, she's playing for the Magic, but it's all about getting her ready for July. And she's a long way off it at the moment. I mean, she only had the baby a couple of months ago, so it's a lot about you come back again to these protocols for return to play. And I mean, I think there is a degree of concern around our midcourt. Maddie Gordon didn't make that tour because she was injured. Now she is back with the pulse this year, but not starting the season. So she's clearly there's something a little bit more serious. I think it's a knee injury. So, these will be concerns for Nolene Taurua and Debs, just to see what they can do, because I'm sure they will have a pretty good idea of the players that they want, but they have to be in top nick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting because I think you could even argue, we've mentioned her already, but Grace Nowicki, in ANZ, she is absolutely sensational. But she did have a few performances. I can't remember exactly if it was Quad Series or the New Zealand series. Can't remember now, but she didn't necessarily have the same strength that she has in the ANZ Premiership. So it's really interesting. And I think that over-reliance on players could also be a contributing factor as to why Maya Wilson didn't end particularly well in terms of her form last season and the recent test series. So yeah, it's fascinating. And what I really liked about that article as well, actually, is Deb said that they're doing a lot of work with all of the ANZ clubs as a whole, as opposed to like specific players. And I think that's a really clever way of building up that depth and quality on a mass scale in a way.
Oh, I tell you, Debs Fuller and Nolene Taurua are like the queens of New Zealand netball. Really, they are so respected. And I remember back actually in 2020, yes, that was our first COVID season, and all the games were played in Auckland, which of course, great for the Auckland teams, but for the likes of the Steel and the Tactics having to fly. And so each week, Nolene and Debs put themselves on the bench of a team and just was supporting. I mean, they are so supportive. But also too, I don't think they're no pushovers, but it's going to be hard. And I think going back to Nweki, I didn't think she was probably getting the delivery that, she required. I thought the midcourt just was not working, and I think we'll see quite a different midcourt when it comes to Silver Fern selection. I mean, I don't know, but I just don't know that some of the players they picked really worked. Like, I mean, Mila Roeli Buchanan. I mean, wonderful to take them and give them a chance. I just don't know that that same 12 will be on the plane to Birmingham.
I was really baffled that there was no Qtr Poi for that series. I mean, she, for me, is outstanding. She's sensational. I couldn't believe that she wasn't selected.
But, well, yes, but then here's a question for you. How did you think she was in the tactics game the other night? Did you notice her?
I was going to say, I actually can't remember her performance, which is probably your answer, isn't it?
Maybe that's I'm thinking of past performance. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I think there was a few surprises that she wasn't there, because she, going back to the Constellation Cup win last year, she came on court and just ignited the mid-court. So what I wonder if they thought there were a few players, right, we know what Tapaya Selby-Rickett might fall into this category. We know what she can do. We know what Poi can do. Let's take some other ones and just see what happens. And I know that perhaps, you could be accused of not showing due respect to the quad series, but I think when you've got a pinnacle event coming up, I think that is how you work, because without that, you just don't know how players are going to manage to step up to that next level.
Yeah, it's all about Com Games and World Cup, isn't it? They're your two pinnacle events. So
absolutely.
Quad Series is absolutely the opportunity to try stuff like that out. So, yeah, I think that's great. Another thing that we've noticed as spectators of all the three major leagues is that the ANZ is probably, the only way I could describe it is the most understated of the three leagues. I feel like the SSN has really gone down the commercialisation route and is very much an entertainment product in that respect. And the Super League, our Super League, is on its way there as well. But the ANZ almost seems a bit muted in comparison. It just gets its head down, gets on with business, and just puts out great content week on week. What are your thoughts on that commercialisation aspect of the ANZ in comparison to SSN and VNSL?
Yeah, I think that's really perceptive, actually. I think that is exactly. I thought you were going to say it looks a bit hokey, but
No, absolutely not. I just think it's such a solid league. It just gets everything. It does the basics really, really well.
Yeah, and I thought, well, yes, thank you, and I think it does, and I think Sky has done a great job with it under increasingly tight constrictions. I mean, again, it's going back to the size of the country. I mean, the battle for New Zealand's sporting finance and funding and sponsorship is so hard. And in this part of the world, it's rugby just gobbles everything up. I think probably in your part of the world, is it football that would dominate?
Yep.
Yeah, and in Australia, it's, I guess, Aussie rules, NRL, cricket takes a lot of the funding over there. So every league probably has its own, battles. But I think, yeah, we're not that flashy, but then I suppose that's New Zealanders aren't known for their flashiness. But I think, I don't know that we want to get too razzmatazz. I mean, I think the Suncorp League, I hate all the advertisements. Listen to me, I hate all the advertisements when I say, that's really what we need because it's money. But I just think, it can be a double-edged sword sometimes, all the flash. And even what they have, the timeouts are sold, aren't they? So they will say that that's what they needed to do to get the money, and I totally respect that. I mean, I think you do what you have to do to get on screen. It would just be nice now if we could somehow get Jamaica and South Africa and Malawi up into those upper echelons, because, man, they've got the talent. And you can't help but think that some of those African nations are just like sleeping giants. If you could pump money into netball in Africa, wow, they would be sensational.
Yeah, we often say this. If there's any millionaires listening to the podcast, send some money, because it's all about the global game, isn't it? And I think that what we're really doing at the moment is supporting that and getting more coverage. It's coming. I think the Netball World Cup in South Africa will have a big role to play.
If I was a millionaire, Lucy, I'd be putting money in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very conscious that we've taken an awful lot of your time. So we're going to move on to some what we call our rapid fire questions. So just got three very quick questions for you. So number one, which player transfer in the off season do you think will make the most impact, either positive or negative?
I think Maturo, going back to the Pulse.
That was actually my answer as well. Next up, what 3 words would you use to describe the ANZ League?
Well, I think we're sort of coloured at the moment because we're all just so excited to be back playing on the court. So I would say exciting, unpredictable, and I'm lost for words.
It's actually quite difficult. We do our little 3-word summaries for the Super League every week, and it's actually really hard.
Yeah, I just find it's my happy place. But that's my happy place. There you go.
I'll give you that. I love that, actually. And finally, which teams are you betting on to make the grand final this year, and who's going to win?
Yes, well, this is an interesting one. I think it will be, even though I haven't seen them yet, I think it will be the Pulse against the Mystics.
Ooh,
and
juicy.
This is assuming that they have all their players available and, that COVID doesn't absolutely, destroy us. I just think the Mystics are good enough, and they've not had that many changes. Sulu Fitzpatrick actually really surprised me in that first game, because I don't know if you saw it, but she had quite a battle with COVID and has been quite outspoken, and not outspoken, but just she has told her story of what it was like for her having COVID. And I think, as has Shannon Saunders, and I think that was a fantastic thing to do, because it opened up the fact that you can be a top athlete and still be just flipping struck down by this thing. So, but anyway, I was surprised to see her play a full game, and I thought that's really encouraging for the Mystics. I'm assuming Weki will be back, and so they will be firing. And I love the feel around, or the sound around the Pulse, even though I haven't seen them play yet. But I just think Maturo and Aliyah Dunn in that shooting circle. They've got this Amelia Walmsley, who was quite an exciting young shooter, as a backup. They will need Maddie Gordon back in that mid-court, but then they've got Jury and Chrissy Manua at the back end. So I think that will be the final, and I think the Mystics will do it again.
Oh, so interesting, because then I started to think, but what about the steel, or what about the stuff? It's so close to competition. I think back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, 6 teams, when they're that close, it just makes for such an exciting ride, doesn't it? So best of luck with the rest of the season. We'll be watching as much as we can. And thank you so, so much for your time and wisdom on the show today. It's been so fascinating to hear your insight.
Oh, well, thank you both very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I freaking love Jenny Wers.
Yeah.
She's so wholesome. Absolutely lovely. I really enjoyed that chat. Before we wrap up, it's time to take a look ahead to the next week of matches, round 9 of the Vitality Netball Superleague. This year, we've teamed up with Sideline TV to pick our Showdown of the week, highlighting 2 key players who we just can't wait to see go head to head. Who are we looking at this week, Luce?
So this one was tough this week, because there's some really, really exciting games happening. Could have gone to Kadeen Corbin on Vicky Isola, could have gone to Proscovia Peace on Huckle, but actually the one that I've gone for is Lefebvre Radaman on Emily Nicol.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that Nicol is such a hustler, and we know she loves to play that explosive GD role, going for ball, going for everything. And Radaman has looked really good this season, a lot more comfortable at Dragons. We know she's got speed to burn, all the clever moves and the tricks up her sleeve. I would say that these 2 are arguably the in-form standout players from their respective sides, and there's obviously a lot to play for in this game. Nicol can really grind down a player, and it'll be up to Radaman to stand up to that pressure and keep going to post.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this one. It's going to be amazing. Let us know what you guys think by heading to our socials, and don't forget to tag @sideline.tv.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Qtr Time. We can't wait to bring you more netball chat and a wrap up of round 9 next week, along with another super special guest interview.
Do subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the matches this weekend and which players have stood out for you.
We would also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please do let us know and do spread the word with your netball pals so even more people can get involved. Don't forget to check out our partners Carbon Jacked and take advantage of the exclusive 30% Netball Pod discount on their memberships. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.